Thanks for coming. I know, like, you want to know what's better, Webpack or Browserify, right? This is what we are for here. So my name is Pawel Kozlowski. I'm a long-time Angular contributor. I'm working for Amadeus, a company behind the software for the travel industry. We use Angular for our projects at work. But most importantly, we are contributing back to Angular. That's why I can spend most of my time actually pushing code to Angular to repository, which I think is kind of good model for companies that use open source. Anyway, we are here today for the ES 2015 modules. And just a disclaimer, I can't pronounce ES 2015 like all the time. So for me, it's ES6 still. And I guess we're all excited and happy about the fact that we've got modules or like syntax and semantics for modules. So here you can see the simple engine class, which I can export. I could also export a variable or some other thing. And later on, as soon as it's exported, someone else can consume it. So by consuming it, I mean I can import. And when I'm saying I want to import something, I need to say what I want and from where I want to have it. Right? This is very simple. This new specification ends all those browsers, like the wars on formats. It kind of puts in the past all this situation where each and every framework had to come up with its own module format. It's ended up this fight between CommonJS or UMD or all those formats. So for the very first time, we've got a very clear syntax and semantic that normally should work in Node.js and in a browser. And as much as we are happy about it, and we want to author in this new format, the reality on the ground is that we can't load these things into today's browsers. And what I mean by this is that if you take this code snippet and try to put it into today's browser in the script tag, you will face two problems. The first one will be the fact that import, export, and from, those are the parts of the syntax that are not really parsed or understood today by the browsers. So you would simply get a parse error. Now there's much bigger problem here, because we are saying import from and give it a string, which looks like a file name or a URL, or something, a piece of string that points to something else, some other module. Now the question is, how we can use this string to fetch the code we depend upon? Should it be from a file engine.js or engine.ts? Or maybe it's packaged already in some other file, like my application package.js, right? And what about if I've got my code written in CoffeeScript, I want to transpile it before? So there are like plenty of those questions, like how do I get this code into the browser? Now, the situation is even worse than this, I can tell you. So we've got this ES 2015 specification, which specified how to author our code using the new ES6 module format. So the import, export, what is the semantic of this? What happens when I import things? What happens when I've got cyclic dependencies? This all was specified. But the loading part, how to fetch the code, what should I use? Should I use XHR or JSON-P or maybe fetch to get actually the code in the browser? This part was left over. It wasn't ready for the prime time. And it's not part of the ES 2015 specification. Now it's a work in progress in a different standard body. So it came as a really shock for me that we've got the whole specification on how to write our code, but we've got nothing in terms of a specification on how to load this code, how to consume this code. Pretty bad, right? So what I'm hoping to do today is to go over different scenarios on how to set up a build and packaging, provided that you still want to use this ES6 module format to write your code. And obviously, there is seldom one-size-fits-all solution. So the setups will be different for a Planker or quite different for like huge multi-modular applications. And as much as I would love to have this talk being a very prescriptive, a cookbook-like, telling you, if you use Planker, do this. If you write like a huge application, do that. What we are going to see is there are multiple solutions. There are multiple setups that gives you the same effect. So this talk is partly invitation to discussion in the community, like what we can do, how we can set up those things so they are easy and performant. Now, whatever our setup is, we need to start with transpiling. Because once again, browsers don't understand import-export. The good news is that all the major transpilers, so Babel, TypeScript, and Tracer, they all understand and can transform the module format, ES6 module format. Now it seems like Tracer is kind of losing steam recently, so the choice is really between Babel and TypeScript. And I guess your particular choice will depend on your stance on the optional types, like do you like them, or if you hate them, you will be choosing one of those things. So when we choose a transpiler, we need to decide when we execute the transformations. And it can be done either during the runtime, when loading code into the browser, or as part of the build step. Obviously, the runtime transpilation is only good enough for very simple experiment, planks or quick hello world type of applications. Most of the real-life setups will involve some kind of build step. And the final choice that we need to make when transpiling our code is like, what should be the target format? Like, what is the module format that we should take ES6 and transpile to? Now, there are many formats. There are like well-known ones like CommonJS or AMD. There are tool-specific formats, and there's a new format called System Register. But I think today, the real choice is only between CommonJS and System Register, because AMD is slightly going out of fashion. We've got very rich tooling for CommonJS. And we've got this System Register format, which is slightly artificial, in the sense that it was created to support full semantics of ES6, including circular dependencies. So it's kind of artificial format because you wouldn't author in it, you wouldn't write code using this module format, but you can still transpile code to this format. Now, the choice of the target transpilation format will partly dictate what we can do with module loading. And once again, here the problem space is open to choices. But I think in this room or in any room that you will have two camps. On one hand, you will have people saying like, okay, I know that we don't have this like specification for the loader, but we know some things about it. Like certain things were discussed and were partly specified. So I want to be part of this future. I want to use those things today. And the second part of the room will say like, like what you are talking about, there's no specification. I don't know how to load those things. I know my stuff. I was using Browserify for years. I know perfectly what I'm supposed to do, as long as you are giving me the CommonJS output. So let's explore those two possibilities. First, let's say you are in this futuristic camp. So once again, there is no specification for the loader, but there was part of the specification in ES6. So we've got this set of projects called SystemJS and some other projects in this whole ecosystem, projects run by Guy Bedford, which is trying to write a polyfill, like a super polyfill, for the module loader. And I'm putting polyfill in the quotes because, once again, it's very hard to write a polyfill for something that is not even specified. And I'm also, it's saying that it's super polyfill because it's far more than just a polyfill. Those projects can load modules in different formats. They can, there's a packaging step and so on and so forth. Now, what this system loader would give us? Well, it would give us the import statement that you can see here on the system namespace. And this import statement allows us to give a URL, and it returns or gives back a promise that resolves to a module that we are loading. Right? So this is there are more into the system loading, but this is kind of entry point to the application. That's why in many examples today, on many setups that you can see with Angular.js, you are going to see system loader being used, and the index.html will look along those lines. So obviously we need to include SystemJS. We need to configure it, and once again, this will be loader specific. This is not something that is part of any specification. And then we can import our entry point to bootstrap the application. Look at this line here, where we are including Angular.js. Actually, we provide a bundle which can be loaded by SystemJS loader. So once again, this is another view of our files. We've got system loader, we've got our application code, and there's the bundle that we've got as part of the NPM distribution. And this bundle includes Angular2 code. It includes Rx dependency, which is mandatory, plus some mandatory polyfills. Right? So this is one of the setups that you are probably seeing quite often in the community. Now, I'm sure that like part of you were like listening to me, it's like, what this guy is talking about? There's no specification, like we are building on sand. Once again, I know my tooling, and I want to use a thing, like things that I know perfectly. And it is true, like as soon as the transpiler can output CommonJS or AMD or any other format that you are used to working with, you can use your existing tooling. You can use your existing infrastructure to set up a build. Now, obviously, we didn't have one module format, so we don't have one tool. We've got many choices. People are comfortable with different tools, with different workflows, and so on. So this is part of this problem in the community, that we've got this fragmented community where you can read a blog post where someone's saying, like, use Webpack or use Webbabel, here is my setup, and so on. So I will do the same. I will say, like, OK, if you use Webpack or if you like Webpack, here's one of the possible setups with Webpack. Right? So this is how index.html could look like when using Webpack for packaging. It's simpler, right, compared to SystemJS, because like I don't have to configure the loader. There is no loader. Oh, there's no presentation. Oh, it's back. Cool. So what we are doing here, we are using just regular script tags, including our dependencies, and including a bundle. Now, what is in this bundle.js? Well, the only reasonable setup that we can have today with tools like Webpack or Browserify is the approach where we bundle everything, like our application code, Angular code, and dependencies into one gigantic file. So once again, this index.html looks quite simple, but you need to understand that you also need to choose a tool, configure it, and have this. So this is like minimal Webpack configuration that I was able to come up with. Now, it's good to have all those options and to go over them and say, like, what exists, what doesn't. But I'm sure that you came here like asking, like, what should I use today? And unfortunately, as much as I would like to give you one definitive answer, it would be dishonest because the space is very fragmented today. But there are some guiding principles. On one hand, if you are new to this whole transpiling, setting up stuff, and you don't know exactly what to choose, what I would suggest is to using system loader plus the bundles that we deliver today. And I'm saying this because this is what all the plankers use, like like small snippets that you can share. This is what we've got in the documentation, and this is what we've got in the Tour of Heroes sample application. So we will keep seeing those setups. Now, on the other hand, if you are already familiar with Webpack, Browserify, or some other tool, you feel comfortable with them, you feel like you kind of a master of this workflow, by all means use them. And what we are going to do, or we are going to try to do, is to make sure that all the workflows are possible, that we are not distributing things in a way that makes your life harder. Now, I'm sure that many people were coming here to this talk and say, like, this guy will come on the stage and say, like, that Webpack is, kicking us, and the rest is, like, rubbish, or that JSPM is the tool of the future, and everyone should switch now. Unfortunately, I was experimenting with those tools, like, for the few past weeks, trying different setups, trying to get, like, a minimal bundle without code application, trying to get a setup which is really easy to write and understand. And I couldn't. Like, there was always something that didn't feel quite right with those setups. And just before this conference, during the speaker's dinner, we were sitting on a bus going to the pub, like few members of the Angular team, and we had like extremely interesting conversation about the preferred tools. And it was discussion saying like, oh, Webpack does this for me, and it's great, and there was another camp log, but it's just too big, and it's like, it does all those things for me. So even in the team itself, we are kind of having still the preferences. I'm sorry. So this is the state of the union, and I'm going to stuff you with some details that you probably never wanted to know about, which might help you in the future to do proper choices, or at least to see where we are heading with the what might happen in terms in the future in terms of packaging. Now, remember our simple class, like the car that takes an engine. And I started by saying that there are two possible transpilation formats, either CommonJS or system register. Let's look at the examples of the transpile code. Once again, I don't want you to read it or like remember it. This is not something you would write by hand. But it gives you like the feel of the overhead of the format, or like how it looks like. As comparison, there is the CommonJS output. And you can see it's much more concise. It probably also looks more familiar because this is what you've been using in other projects. So why this system register is so much bigger as compared to CommonJS? Well, there is a very simple reason, is that the system register was designed as the format that tries to be correct. And correct in the sense that it should give you all the semantic of module dependencies as specified in ES6. And most notably, it knows how to deal properly with the circular dependencies, right? So it got this overhead on top. On the other hand, CommonJS has like less noise. And it has all this rich tooling, right? Like Webpack is natively consuming CommonJS, Browserify was created to consume JS. We know we've got all those tooling, we know all those workflows. On the other hand, system register, if you look at it, you can see that this is just a function call that fills in the system register repository, which means that if I've got multiple files and I want to bundle them or package them, it's as simple as concatenating files. I can also use this output in a script tag and just to pre-populate the register. So both formats got their pros and cons. And even for the Angular packaging, we are going back and forth. We started with the system register output because we are afraid of the circular dependencies. Then we remove them from the code base, and we see like, okay, like the overhead of system register is just too big for what we are doing, and we are considering producing CommonJS output. So there are trade-offs here. Now, there are many discussions. I'm trying to talk, like, in the past few weeks, I was like trying to talk to everyone who was willing to listen or to talk to me about those topics. And when I had those conversations, what I realized is that we going into the confused mode because we are using word system, which is massively overloaded in this problem space. So on one hand, it means the system as the namespace for the import method that we used to have in ES6 specification. System register is the name of the format, right, that we just saw before. We've got this SystemJS project, which is kind of trying to act as the loader, polyfill. And on top of this, we've got the whole ecosystem around the SystemJS project, which has its bundler, and so on and so forth. So I'm just kind of highlighting this because when we've got this conversation together, we need to be precise just to avoid misunderstandings. Now, this is how things look today, but this is the problem space which is quite new. Like the ES6 modules were specified just, like specification was finished just this year. And this is also the space where there's a lot of movement. So as we know from the Back to the Future movie, those guys were pretty bad at predicting future, right? Like we don't have flying cars. There's actually a blog post I found yesterday, like 20 lies Back to the Future. 2, it excludes hoverboard. So we are bad at predicting future, but there are a few things that can probably happen, and those things will change the way we think about the packaging and bundling. So one of those things is that Webpack is things in the assorted order. Like Webpack is having branch for Webpack 2, which is to with the second version, Webpack will be consuming ES6 input other than just focusing on CommonJS. On the other hand, there are new projects like Rollup, which are trying to do proper tree shaking or like minimal bundling, actually understanding the whole source code, all the methods that you are calling, and create a bundle that only has code that you are actually using. Once again, those projects are only using ES6 as the input, so the CommonJS is kind of less interesting in this context. As you saw during the keynote, we are working on the Angular2 CLI, for which we are going to make choices. We will be forced to make choices, like what is the bundler that we are using, what is the setup that we are using, right? So we'll have the definitive answer in the near future. And not to mention things like HTTP, where the whole packaging idea might just be thrown out of the window. So there are many, many things happening, and many people thinking about what's the best setup. So there will be a lot of movement in this space, right? It's not the end of the story. So the quick sum up. I think we all love ES6 models. We want to author code using this new module format. But we know, we perfectly understand, as the community, the current situation is messy. There are many tools, there are many workflows, there are many possibilities. We are not ready as the Angular team yet to commit to one ecosystem. We are not saying, okay, you should be using JSPM or you should be using Webpack. But what we want to do is to make sure that whatever tool you are using, that we are not doing anything that will prevent you or stop you from using those tools. So if you see what we distribute with Angular2, or how we distribute Angular2, or the formats that we are using, if there is anything that stops you from having a proper workflow that you like, just talk to me, talk to us, open GitHub issues. Let's have this conversation together. All right. So once again, let's make sure that we've got something that works for everyone. Now this is all I've prepared. Thanks for coming once again. And I also, on the slides, I compiled a list of several starter kits, starting with the very small official ones, like a Planker. I'm maintaining 2 sets of the minimal starter kits, the ones that have got minimal configurations that you can understand. And there are also links to the well-known community-driven starter kits. And for the questions and answers, we can meet in half an hour in room 2. Thank you.